Ladies and gentlemen, continue to enjoy your lunch, but we're going to get started so we can stay on schedule a little bit. My name is Stanley Miller, and I'm a member of the NOCA, the committee that works with the community at the PRC. And we're really pleased today, during this seminar series, to have a presentation by two wonderful women that are really doing the work of the angels. And the two people that are with us today is Bernie Kerrigan. She is the director of First Year Cleveland, which is a startup organization. I shouldn't say startup. It's a new organization, been around a little over a year, that deals with infant mortality. And it's a great topic, and you're going to hear a lot about that as we go forward. And Christin Farmer is with her, and she has a great story to tell because she also works in the field. I first met Christin when she was over at University Circle Inc. doing a lot of great stuff, and then we found out that she was deeply involved in this infant mortality issue, so she's joined the team. But just as a man, I think it's important that you guys hear a couple of words from me. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about infant mortality. I really didn't. I grew up with all boys in my family. My mother was there. She was hard as nails, and we just did what she told us to do. But now I'm a grandfather, and I have 7 granddaughters. So this issue has become very important to me, and especially when you hear them talk about some of the issues that impact infant mortality, and specifically the huge disparity that exists between the majority community and the minority community. And one that I want you to pay special attention to is the one called generational stress, and how that impacts the ability of a woman of color to carry babies to full term. And I guess you've probably heard the story, well, these are just poor women having problems with not having good resources and all kind of things. This whole issue of generational stress impacts African American women with 6-figure incomes working for large corporations. Good educations. So it has nothing to do with that. It's what's happened in their DNA over the course of years and years. So I want to introduce these two ladies formally, and we get started. First, Bernie Kerrigan. Bernie is the inaugural executive director of the First Year Cleveland program. She began her career as a medical and prenatal social worker at university hospitals. Ms. Kerrigan holds a BSW in social work from Ohio State University and completed master's level social work courses at the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel School of Applied Social Science at Case West Missouri University. She also holds certificates in project development from Kent State University. I met Bernie when she was at the United Way of Cleveland doing great work.
Thank you.
The next person, her partner in crime here, is Christin Farmer. She has a BA and is the founder of the executive director of the Birthing Beautiful Communities program, whose mission is to improve the social and community structures that lead to poor birth outcomes through cultural, educational, advocacy, support, and engagement. As trained doulas, Christin and her team work directly with mothers who are at high risk for infant mortality through the prenatal period, labor, and through delivery. And they are doing wonderful work in Cleveland. I'd like to give Bernie's going to go first, give Bernie a hand and follow them closely. Got one more thing to do. You also received a copy of the schedule of future seminars. Please, we'd like to have you come. The food is good, and you'll also get some great information. Okay?
Thank you. When I was approached to do this presentation, I couldn't think of a better partner than crime than Ms. Farmer. When you hear her work, you will hear that First Year Cleveland was system work, but it's as important to have leadership in the neighborhoods leading new solutions. This is your 5th infant mortality public-private partnership. Let's make it your last. And I'm being serious. That we started in 1968 on this problem. We got the largest federal grant. President even came. We stopped it after 2.5 years. We weren't moving the needle. We got to ask the right questions. When I was hired because I have done collective impact on many issues, but I think I was particularly hired because I did work with pregnancy of no prenatal care, drug and alcohol, teen pregnancy. And I think many of us thought that's the issue of our babies dying, but I hope today you stay open that there are other factors going on in our families, and we are calling each of you to have action on those items. We're going to go real quick. I would like your first name, what you do, and one word you think of when you hear our babies are dying. And we're going to make this quick so I don't kill Kristin's whole presentation, but I think we have to know who's in this room to know what kind of action you can do leaving the room. So, first name.
Gabriella Celeste, I'm a policy director at the Schubert Center for Child Studies in their case, and urgency.
Margaret, I'm with the Gucci Project. I'm a community practice person.
One word you think of when you hear about our babies dying?
Unnecessary.
Good.
Marie, I'm with the Center for Child Health and Policy at Rainbow Babies and Children, and I think of shouldn't happen.
Mohammed, MPH student, health policy award is sad.
Thank you.
I'm Brad. I'm a PhD candidate in sociology. I study HIV inequalities here in Cleveland, and I think of unequal.
Very good.
Hi, I'm Megha Bansal, and I'm DPH resident. I can say Arjun.
Very good.
Kathy Patel, MPH candidate. Why?
Simardeep Singh, Dental Public Health, terrible.
Pat Mohabiak, retired family physician and member of East Cleveland School Board, tragic.
Rockland, Little Cigar Study, unjust.
Rachel Krumsick, Little Cigar Study. No word. Tragic.
Julia Tangray, second year pediatric resident at Cleveland Clinic. Unnecessary. I'm Audrey Casella, data coordinator here at CWRU. Very sad.
Michael Householder, Assistant Dean, College of Arts and Sciences at Case, fiscal.
Julie Hewitt, project manager here at the PRC. Unnecessary.
Elizabeth Roth, a researcher in pediatrics, I think resources.
Last year, postdoc at the Department of Physics.
Jackie Matthews, Center for Community Health Integration at UG and BBC. Totally unacceptable.
Audrey Hudak, government and community relations for the Cleveland Clinic. Tragic.
Ellen Rome, medicine Cleveland Clinic, preventable.
Christina Wheeler, the dietetic intern here at the PRC. Unnecessary.
Raj Shambhata, community pediatrics, Cleveland Clinic. I think it's tragic.
My name is Rashida Larkin. I work for Cleveland Clinic in Government and Community Relations, and I think of disparity.
Sarah Jones, project manager here at the PRC, and I think preventable. Jenna Brinker, project coordinator here at the PRC. Unnecessary.
Stanley Miller, pastor of Rush United Methodist Church in Oberlin, and unfortunate.
Neil Hodges with Neighborhood Connections and the manager of, with Jackie, the Greater University Circle Community Health Initiative. This ugly head of structural racism.
Hi, I'm Monica Webb Hooper. I'm a professor in the School of Medicine and director of the Office of Cancer Disparities Research, and I think devastating.
Ebony Hood, community resident and advocate, and I think more to say.
Erica Hood, PRC, also community engagement coordinator of 44128 Infant Mortality community group, and I think just generational oppression.
Lauren Bottoms, Cleveland Department of Public Health. I just get angry.
Abby Millar, Cleveland Clinic, Science Institute. I think I'm preventable. Amanda Hollis, Senior Director of Foundation Relations at Cleveland Clinic, and I think heartbreaking.
Amy Olchak, Research Assistant at the Center for Child Health and Policy. I think unacceptable.
I'm Claire Alzheimer at the Center for Child Health and Policy, and I also think heartbreaking.
Suzanne Lowe, also with the Center for Child Health and Policy, and I think sad.
Teresa Hollinside, Prevention Research Center, and unacceptable.
Catherine Osborne, medical anthropology doctoral student, and inequitable.
My name is Amber Linder. I'm a graduate student here at CWRU, and I think it's very unfortunate.
My name is Gabrielle Reith. I'm an MD and PhD student at Case, and I think it's time for a change.
I'm Gwen. I'm a PhD student in epidemiology and biostatistics here.
Sarah Kuhn-Gonzalez, Research Associate at the PRC. Tragic.
I'm Genevieve Brookby. I work here at Case, and just heartbreaking.
I'm a BSN student at Case, tragic.
Izzy Tung, BSN student at Case, I think overlooked.
Camera leader.
Susan Patron, Communications Dissemination Specialist at the PRC. Speechless.
All right. The words you used, I hope you write down. I have the honor and privilege of being the inaugural Executive Director of First Year Cleveland. I am holding the hospitals, CEOs accountable. I am holding the mayors accountable. I am holding the county executive accountable. But today, to be honest, I'm holding each of you accountable. We are enough about talk. This is an issue that's upsetting lots of people, but I don't see business being done differently. And I need business done by each of you differently, and I need then business done by system leaders differently. Make sense? If you do something for 50 years and it's not working, shake it up. The babies are worth it. Everyone good? So when you leave today, I am not going to be happy if you don't put one thing down that you're going to do differently to save our babies. Because you heard it a couple, that anger is not going to make a difference unless you individually change your behavior and what influence you have on your own company's system that you change theirs. It's the only way this is going to work. And it has to. And Dr. Rum was correct. Most of it is preventable. And we're going to talk about that today. There are some things that are going to be tougher to move than others, but the majority can be moved. We are doing something to get our babies killed. In December 2015, 13 civic leaders created a bold new First Year Cleveland. Cuyahoga County, our job is very simple. Lower the rate of babies dying, particularly the African Americans. It can't be clearer. In April, Case, I'm thrilled. After many people went for it, Case School of Medicine was picked as the fiscal agent, and staff are not only housed there, they're putting $1 million over the next 3 years in kind to this project. And we thank the School of Medicine, who also wants to be change agent. I'm thrilled to be hired in November 2016. Our role is very, very simple, but must be activated by all of you. Collectively stop our babies from dying. You cannot do this any one individual agency, company, hospital. It's a collective action to stop our babies. Any community that has done this, it required lots of different people holding people accountable and do business differently. We must have first an understanding of why the babies are dying. When I was hired, I was told, Bernie, fix the drug and alcohol issue, fix this or that. But to be honest, that's not what the data is telling us, and we're going to pass out the data today, and you're going to hear from a leader in our community and really becoming an expert on the state that she sees it firsthand. We have to give voices to what the real problem is. You work on a problem, but you don't know what it is, that's how you waste 50 years and thousands of babies dying unintentionally. We do need to have data to you quicker. You have to understand the data, challenge the data, and make sure all of your plans and what piece you're doing actually aligns with data, not assumptions. We do have data gaps. We need to hear more from you. What other data do you need? Public policy is key in this area. We need to move some both local, state, and national policies, but this is also policies in the workplace, policies within hospitals and systems of care, mobilize funding, and get this owned by the 1 million people of Cuyahoga County. The only thing that will work is this frustrates enough of us that we get to a peaking point that everyone has to change their behavior. So, no surprise, most of you should know the definition is a live born baby before her first or his first birthday. It is over 1,000 lives. That is a little unique. So you want to just watch when you hear the infant mortality number. Most people go to it's over 100. It is over 1,000 lives. It is a very sensitive index we possess on social welfare. So if we're collecting data consistently and accurately, it should show us how we are treating the most vulnerable of our community, newborns. It is a mirror often, if you're collecting data correctly, of understanding and protecting the well-being of our very youngest and most vulnerable. What impacts infant mortality? No surprise to anyone. We've known this for years. High-quality health care, adequate food and nutrition, safe and stable housing, psychological and physical environment, and sufficient income. Christin and I have been working with a group on issues of housing too, so you can put all of those under. If anyone's been through with better health partnerships, improving any kind of health outcome, and this group would know it better than I, you will move the needle about 20% by making sure you have the high quality health care there. The rest are all based on the other social determinants underneath it, so you have to address them all together in a comprehensive manner. So this is too hard to read, so we're going to hand it out real quickly. If you can take one and pass on. But why it's being handed out, hello, Dr. Mobley. If we can start thinking out, and you can raise your hand because hopefully you can't read that and you haven't had the sheet of paper. What's our babies dying from? Number one reason. Premature birth. Great. When I was told premature birth and I asked what's the average premature birth age, I was given 32 weeks. It's not what the data is saying. If you have your thing here, how many babies died of extreme premature birth in 2016? 69, correct. How many died of a gestation 22 weeks or less? Almost 70% of our babies are non-viable babies when they're born. So we're looking at that issue. Why are babies born non-viable? Why are they coming out of the womb earlier than they're supposed to be coming out of the womb? I'll stop and go to the top just so you know how to read it. You see our population. Our poverty rate actually hasn't changed. Our population has gone down in the county, but our poverty rate has not changed. You see our births. Whites make up about 53.6, African American 38.7, other. How are births done? By birth certificates, self-identified by the mother, just so you know. And they only have those three choices. Used to be white and other. And we'll talk about that in some data we see earlier. You'll see many of our babies are born celebrating their first birthday. But the ones not, the 128, much of that was, we think, preventable. You'll see the breakdown of Medicaid, non-Medicaid. We actually have seen great improvement of prenatal care. About 70% get in early. We were ranked the top out of all the cities in Ohio for getting people into prenatal care on time and actually continue their prenatal care. We have very few doing no prenatal care. And in fact, when we did the records of the 128 babies that died in 2016, none of them were no prenatal care. So none of them had a positive tox screen, drug and alcohol tox screen. There were 2 18-year-olds. We only thought one, but they just double-checked the records, 2 18-year-olds. So what is going on that our babies are dying? Look at the zip codes. Anyone surprised by that? Euclid, Shaker Heights, Garfield Heights. You got Beechwood, Highland, Harvard Lee, Rocky River. Does that sound to you like a Medicaid inner city problem?
No.
Does that surprise you?
Yeah.
Look at this number. The worst we had up to this year was 3.1. And anyone that could make the Community Advisory Committee, we heard Chris from Cuyahoga Board of Health, this is now 5.9. That's 6. So for every, in 2017, what this means for every one white baby that died under infant mortality, 5.9 were African American. 1 to a 5.9. Out of that 5.9, half were on Medicaid, half were on private insurance. We did focus groups with some of the private insurance. They're the highest medical compliance. They are going to the doctors. They are doing everything right. And if one more person tells me, if this mom would just do this, these 14,747 are busting their butts doing everything right. Going to the doctors. Doing a lot of things right. We got to improve, and we're thrilled to have some experts here in tobacco. We do have to look at the tobacco issue and obesity that is impacting, but they are doing many things right. So what's killing our babies? As you can see, our priorities, we think number one is structural racism. We think systems are actually killing our babies, and we have to address structural racism. We also think there is an interplay between race, equity, infant mortality, not only with babies dying, but babies going into the NICU. We also have to look at this prematurity rate. What is going on that we are the worst city in the country for preterm babies? Just came out from March of Dimes. The worst, when you have one of the best actually in Ohio, prenatal care system. And so we have to start asking those tough questions and using data to address them. Our job is to get you the data, get great system thinkers along with great nonprofit and for-profit and faith-based to start addressing these. I'm going to be very brief to give plenty of time for Christin, but look at this. From 1980 to 2015, we actually had a marked improvement, 12.8 to 7.2. 44% improvement. But who improved? The white babies. When you look at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots, the reason there are dots there, and we thank Dr. Art James, who is allowing us to use his slides, and we'll give him credit at the end with a contact information from him. That's when it used to just say white babies and other. So to be honest, it wasn't until the year that you see noted that they actually started allowing families to identify by African American. Please note how long this gap has persisted, 36 years. It probably has gone longer, but we couldn't collect the data back then. So you have to say this is a long-term problem. But it's not because African American women are doing something to kill their babies. It is our system is doing something to kill their babies. When you note here that we have to go as far back as 1975 to find a white infant mortality rate comparable to our 2015 black infant mortality rate. This suggests a 40-year survival time lag. That would mean I'd have to wait and come back 40 years to you to be able to tell you that the black babies are where the white babies were. You know they're going to only get better on it. So we think you should be angry. We think this should make you sick to your stomach. But we want action, no more words. So why aim for equity? If there was equity in infant mortality in Ohio, what would it look like if everything was equal? So you see where it's not. You would see just 215 alone, 234 babies would be still alive. And it's on each of our backs on this. That means 2 out of every 3 black babies that died in 2015 should be still here. They were preventable. The white families, the white mom, the white baby born under very similar conditions other than race actually are here. What does this mean? Since 1990, we could have saved 5,914 black babies just in Ohio alone if we had equity. If that doesn't make you sick to your stomach, nothing will. We first started the question, what is it about race that has our African American babies dying? And if you haven't had the privilege to hear Dr. James, he came in a little late. He was coming in from Columbus, and I had a little flip chart if anyone was in that room. He took the race, scratched it out, and said racism. He said there is nothing unique about the African American woman. What is unique is what they have to face by the systems. That it is not race that is actually killing our babies. It is racism. We spent then almost 4 months doing deep dives, and we conclude he is correct. You will see articles from the Journal of Medicine talking about structural racism, and then we get into many other things that impact. We are now working with systems to begin addressing where should we go with structural racism. Where we went with our strategic plan, if you need a copy, let me know. We are, while the mother is the environment of the developing fetus, the community is the environment of the mother. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment which it grows, not the flower. we have been spending 50 years fixing something that we missed, that you got to fix the soil, the environment, not actually go after the individual. One, it was wrong, not based on data. Two, it clearly did not work. So we find a lot of excuses. And to be honest, I had a lot of pushback when we started thinking of structural racism. People are like, you cannot come out, Bernie, as an inaugural executive director, being white and saying this is structural racism. You only have funding for 3 years. You'll be shut down, unemployed. But I'll be honest, I am so proud of the county executive and his leadership, and the mayor, Frank Jackson, and the heads of the hospitals, and everybody else. And we have a few key people here on the executive committee that were on the planning, saying it is time to have this courage to get the facts out and let people like Christin and others lead solutions that will actually sustain and stop our babies from dying. We want to really, again, Dr. James, we thank him, but this really helped us think it through. When you look at this, look how long slavery and Jim Crow has been the experience of America. And then you go from the equal and the struggle. The majority of American history, our lives, our DNAs from our parents to grandparents or great-grandparents has been under Jim Crow and slavery. So why wouldn't we think this is impacting and that we have to begin addressing it? Disparities is not due to the lack of access of health care. It is mostly the result, we feel, of policy decisions from a systematically disadvantage of some populations. And that especially populations of color, and this is tied into structural racism. If I cannot stress enough, there's as many African American middle and upper class babies dying than there are on Medicaid. They're both important, but it's a voice and a story we have to hear. We wanted to make sure there was ample time for Christin Farmer, who has led this community in actually creating solutions of what can be done in neighborhoods that should be then transformed into systems of care. And Christin, I am going to try to shut me out here so we can get you in.
Sorry, it's not a seamless transition. I wanted to present on the present, so I had to be a little difficult. So thank you for the introduction, Bernie. And so I'm just a regular person, right? I mean, I grew up in the neighborhoods that I still serve today. I grew up in the Huff neighborhood. And when I hear Bernie, we talk about this every single day. And I mean, my emotion and how angry I am or dissatisfied or all of the words that I heard here today, I have been able to channel that through the work that my organization, Birth and Beautiful Communities, does. So we started, oh, does this not work? So we started back in 2014. I've been a birth worker or doula, D-O-U-L-A. Most people don't know what a doula is. Does anyone know what a doula is? Oh, okay. 5 people.
Better, it's growing.
So I always have to sort of, define what a doula is. So traditionally, a doula is a woman who, thank you so much. Up and down. Up and down, got it. So traditionally, a doula is someone who attends labor and delivery for an expectant mom. They're typically trained in various labor skills to just be able to create a birth plan with the mother and allow her to have this birth that she wanted. But the thing about a doula is most people in the communities in which we serve, the people who probably need doula care the most, can't afford to have doula care because doulas charge anywhere between $500 and $2,000, and who just has that sort of money laying around when it's time to give birth? So Birth and Beautiful Communities took that a step further, and so not only do we provide birth doula work, or doula care, but we also provide postpartum doula care too. So we are with the mom for a stretch of about 80 weeks. for about 80 weeks, and that's during the prenatal period from 16 weeks pregnant at the labor and delivery and until the baby is at least a year old. So our mission is very simple. We want to improve the systemic and community structures that have led us to this place in the first place. So that has everything to do with the social determinants of health. We have a team of 15 women. And we are not only birth attendants and doulas, but we are actually sisters to the women, and we are friends with the women because we live within the same communities in which we serve. So just naturally, we sort of build this relationship and this rapport with one another to where we can talk about a lot of different things. And a lot of people may not realize this, but a lot of the women live in isolation, or they're around one another, and so they're all going through the same circumstances, and so no one really knows what to do or how to do to get out of those circumstances. So we are there as the support person, but also modeling as well too, modeling behavior, modeling who we are, letting them know that they don't have to go through this alone and that we are there to support them. And so this is a snippet from a Channel 5 newscast about a mom that we supported in her.
That's what a local group of women is doing in some of Cleveland's toughest neighborhoods.
The goal is to combat the area's high infant mortality rate. Kristin Bolt has the story now from the newsroom tonight. And Kristin, those helpers are also neighbors.
They're called community birth workers, Lee, and they're connected with new moms or soon-to-be ones in the same neighborhood. One teaches about proper parenting techniques and the other learns. Together, they also connect over living in an area where violence and hardship prevail.
That's good. That from that one was good news. This is my first time ever breastfeeding, so this is a new thing for me.
There's been a lot of firsts for Cassandra Lee this time around.
I was letting my kids sleep on their side, lower their stomach, so she taught me how to teach them on sleep on their back.
Breastfeeding, sleeping, car seats. All things this single mom did not know how to do with her other two children. But now she's learning from this woman.
I was there for you anytime you want them to call me and let me know what you need.
Paulette Chambers, Cassandra's community birth worker.
Look at like just the eyes, the ears, and the arms, the hands, and if I think she missed something, I'll mention it. If I need her, all I got to do is call her and she's here.
Both are moms, and both live here in the crime-ridden, blight-heavy Huff neighborhood, where the infant mortality rate is more than double the national average according to state health statistics.
I can understand some of her stress better because I'm here in it. Some of the things that she hear, I hear.
The two got paired up to a local nonprofit called Birthing Beautiful Communities, started by this woman who grew up in Huff.
I saw a need for birth workers, and particularly birth workers, African American birth workers.
2 years ago, Christin Farmer started recruiting women here in this area, and since then has trained 9 of them to become birth workers. Collectively, they've helped 40 new and expecting moms.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
All moms who have raised healthy babies. And the same goes for Cassandra, whose bundle of joy, Kiana, is healthy and happy too.
It makes me feel very welcome, you know. If I need someone to talk to, you talk to me, you know. If I need any help with programs, they guide me.
Birthing Beautiful Communities is funded by grants. Now in 2015, Ohio ranked 45th in infant mortality overall and had one of the highest rates of infant death for black mothers nationwide. Statistics for 2016 are not available. Mark?
Although I didn't really care how the reporter sort of talked as if Huff is just this tragic neighborhood, right? And it's the community that I grew up in. But the purpose of me showing that was just to show the interaction between the birth worker and the mother and the relationship that they have built with one another. So yeah, this is a picture of what Huff looks like. As Bernie said before, this is not not necessarily a poverty issue. Huff is the first neighborhood that we started working out of under a larger initiative, the Greater University Circle Community Health Initiative that my 2 partners here, Neil Hodges and Jackie Matloob, are on. So we started this pilot about a year or so ago within the Huff neighborhood, but this is just a snapshot of what it looks like. So for us, it's really about not only addressing those social determinants and those health issues, but how can we really bridge the gap between community health and community wealth, right? A lot of the communities in which we are working in, as you can see, the median household income and poverty, what we are aiming for is true equity on all levels. So can we create a workforce development program that's able to train and hire women within the community to do the work? And so we do that. And then we do our own recruitment, we do our own training, and then we employ women. And what it turns out to be is community ownership, where people are actually getting involved on a grassroots level to make a difference within their own communities. So the birth workers, they're paid pretty well. They're started off pay at $20 an hour. And they get paid a flat fee of $500 per birth, and it's intentional. So even on a part-time basis, which the women are part-time workers, they still are able to make a decent living for themselves and for their families. And so this is just a snapshot of what our training and development looks like. So we have in-house training. Our assistant director does all of the training, but as you can see, there are 18 different components that comes along with our training. So it's 8 weeks long. It's very intense, and we do a number of field trips, and we have a lot of partners that we work with who come in and do some of our training, but all of that is very intentional. So this is just a quick overview about infant mortality in Cleveland, though Bernie really talked about it. We really focus on the social factors of infant mortality: toxic stress, the isolation, the nutrition, and also the poverty piece. And as we know, race matters. And again, at the bottom, as I said, infant mortality is not a poor black problem. And black women with college degrees are still more likely to lose their infants than a white woman without a high school diploma. And that right there speaks to the lack of equity within our community. So this is what it looks like for the infants in Huff. Huff is our pilot neighborhood. So this is why I am bombarding you all with Huff. And I really love Huff community too. But this is what it looks like for the Huff community. The infant deaths. And I love how our friend over at Neighborhood Connections, Lila, put this together as a map that's sort of just in your face about what it looks like across the United States versus what it looks like in this one neighborhood here, and also with the low birth weight babies. So going back to Bernie's storyboard, I just wanted to point out some of the facts that she had already stated. But here it's almost a 50% split between private insurance companies and then Medicaid cover. So again, it is not just this issue around poverty. And what we've seen within our doors, we serve women from all backgrounds, all socioeconomic backgrounds, right? We have seen an increase in middle class black women who are coming to us for services because they just want someone who they can talk to, who they can relate to, who understands the things that they may be going through. And that's very valid. And again, although Bernie showed the racial disparities, it's just a part of my presentation. It's no good. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our perinatal support program, because Birth and Beautiful Communities is the actual organization. But then we do have programming underneath that. So the perinatal support program includes weekly classes, and they're paired with a one-on-one birth worker or a doula. And again, that person is with them for the entirety of the length of their stay within our program. So they get that one-on-one support, which the doulas contact them twice a week to check on them, make sure, go to prenatal visits with them, go to postpartum visits with them, go to any appointments that they feel like they need support in. We've been to the courthouse and we've been to all type of places just so that when a woman says that she needs support, then we are there to support her in that way. But then we also provide group support as well too. So all of these classes here include our group support. And our model here is our holistic birth equity model. And so this really shines a light on all of the areas that we look at, all of the areas that make a person a whole person, right? So from preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, housing, workforce, maternal mental health, and the education and business piece, and also the justice and legal side of things. We serve women in that capacity through direct service, engagement, and we also do advocacy, which I'll talk more about. So this is the difference. So traditionally, I spoke about it a little bit earlier. Traditionally, this is what a doula is. And then this is what we do on the right as perinatal support persons. So again, we aren't paid from the mom. We are grant funded primarily, but we're trying to change that because our services save a lot of people a lot of money, right? So if we can show that the impact that we're having on the lives within our community, then it's very cost effective for us to actually be paid up front for our services. So I wanted to touch on the maternal mental health piece really quickly because Dr. Angela Neal Bernadette couldn't be with us today. So she is a psychologist and she's also a professor at Kent State University, and she is absolutely amazing. She created what we call Sisters Offering Support, the SOS Circle. And so there are 4 sessions, but we're actually about to extend them to 11 sessions because the women don't want to leave after those 4 sessions. So we have them every single week, and they are constantly asking us, can they please come back? And so we are actually going to extend it out for to 11 weeks. So she wrote this book called Soothe Your Nerves, and I really recommend a lot of people go ahead and get this book. Shameless plug, promoting her. I read this book in a day. And after I read it, I was like, oh my God, I was like, how did she know my life? This was like all about me, right? And I was just like, oh, too intimate. She knew all about me, right? But it's all of those things that we feel and that we know, but we just haven't been able to identify it, right? So then we just don't know how to express it. And so essentially that's what this SOS Circle does for women. It allows women to come to this safe space to where they can really express the issues that they have or the thoughts that they're thinking or the emotions that they're feeling, and no one is there judging them. And then they're able to identify what that is. They're able to actually say, oh, that happened to me. Oh, that's called a panic attack. That happened to me. I know what that feels like. Now I know what I can do to prevent that from happening, or I know who I need to remove from my life to prevent that from happening, right? Or whatever it is that women need to do in order for them to manage those symptoms that they have. And a lot of this has to do with prematurity, right? Whether or not a woman is able to stay pregnant long enough for her baby to be full term, because whatever is happening with the mother is happening to that baby. And so we have to be very mindful of that. We have to be very mindful about how we treat our pregnant women, right? Because for whatever reason in this society, birth is not sacred anymore. And birth should be sacred because you are carrying life. So everyone has to respect the pregnancy on every level, a systems level, on a community level, on a relationship level. It's to respect the pregnancy. So Dr. Angela had this sister circle already. She created this some time ago, but she tailored it for us, specifically for pregnant women, African American pregnant women. And so she talks about the effects of stress, anxiety, panic, and depression on the pregnant body. But she trains our birth workers to facilitate the circles. So she doesn't need to be there. We're there every single Wednesday. We have one tonight. Where we are able to sit in this very safe space, and we're outgrowing our space again because now it's usually 30 women. We're actually having to break it up now so that we have smaller sessions. But music, that's something else that she uses within the SOS Circle as a relaxation tool. So community and institutional engagement. We've done a number of things across the community to engage. So I have a little short story. That before we were ever funded, we were volunteers, and so we applied for a super small grant with Neighborhood Connections, which is available to anybody who wants to do small community projects. And it was for $4,200. And we had this sort of idea about going around in different communities and sort of hosting these forums or just little information sessions to talk about what a birth worker is and what we do and how we do it. And we also wanted to hear experiences from other people. So we decided to host a number of events like the Baby Belly Retreat, and we got an amazing turnout. We had no idea that this was going to happen. And there were so many women and families and fathers who were interested, who wanted to know more, or they would say, this is my first child, I have no idea what I'm doing. But if you think about it, when you have a child, you don't know what you're doing, right? I mean, you just like, my son is 10 and he's still alive, so I'm doing something good, right? It's every day, right? Step by step. So from there, it was just more so like, okay, how can we really, do this to where we can extend our services to people within a community and make this an ongoing thing and just make it a natural thing. Like, this should be here. There should be some support within our communities, and it shouldn't be so hard to find, right? So not only do we engage with the community, we engage with the institutions as well too, because the institutions, they need to understand who they're serving. And so a part of that in the work that we do with the Greater University Circle Community Health Initiative is really built around that. How can we help you to improve your services? How can we help you to learn about the people in which you are serving, right? Because you are here in this community, but these people are this community, right? And without these people, there is no institutions, right? So we have to be more mindful of the people that we are serving. And so a part of our work is doing that, is going into the institutions and speaking to them about the communities in which they serve and things that they may need to be mindful of. So advocacy, again, I spoke a little bit about this before in the Greater University Circle Community Health Initiative. So I didn't put the logo on here, but now I'm regretting it, right? Because there's a logo for Gucci, and it is in a slogan, a campaign, and it's called "And How Are the Children," right? And so, Jackie, help me out. What's the name of the tribe? The Maasai tribe. The Maasai tribe, right. So the warriors in this tribe, upon greeting one another, they ask, "And how are the children?" Because the children in their tribe is indicative of the health of the community, of the whole community, which is very true, because children and babies can't care for themselves. So if the babies and the children aren't doing well, then this community is not doing well. I mean, it is the most vulnerable population. And so a lot of that work and our partners that you can see listed on here, but there's an initiative also in Glenville, which is the neighborhood I currently live in, around lead poisoning as well. And so it's all connected, right? I mean, it's not just infant mortality. It's not just lead poisoning. We hear a lot about hypertension and diabetes. I mean, there's a lot of ailments that are primarily affecting African American people. So there is sort of this analogy. Has anyone in here ever did the Racial Equity Institute in here? Okay, a few people. If you haven't, I certainly recommend that you go, because I think there are only 2 more months in November and December. But it's hosted by Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. And so there's a half-a-day session and there's a 2-day session. But the 2-day session is the session that everyone needs to attend, because it really talks about the processes in our minds and how we get to a place to where we think that it's all on the individual and not on the society and the culture of that society as a whole. And so one of the analogies that they use in REI is they say that if you go outside in your backyard and you have a pond back there and you see a fish floating up, belly up, you may take the fish out and you'll say, "Oh my God, this poor fish, I wonder what happened to this fish." But if you go outside and you see that there are hundreds of fish in this pond, you don't take each fish out and say, "What is going on with all of these fishes that's dead in here?" You say, "What's wrong with the water?" right? And so that is the spark and the start of their groundwater series that they have. And so it's the same thing as the upstream analogy. You know, you go upstream so that you can find out why these fish are jumping. It's the kids, really, the analogy. But basically, we have to go up top to figure out what is really plaguing our communities. So back to the infant mortality systems and our advocacy piece here. Systems change, which we break out into subcommittees, and our subcommittee is really focused on systemic racism. What is that? What does that mean? And what can we really do? True equity is really the only thing that's going to be able to solve not just infant mortality, but a lot of these disparities that we have as a whole. The Medicaid coverage and maternity and family leave. Why is it not so important in our society that parents get to spend enough time with their children? You know, I mean, when we say children are the future, that's true, but they need nurturing, you know, and they need the parents need the ability to be there. That affects a lot of women's ability to breastfeed, you know, having to go back to work so soon. We have clients all the time who we literally have to prep and prepare for them to go back to work a week after giving birth. Because I know, and this is, again, it's not a poor blacks problem, because we have plenty of married women, 2-income parents, who one of them still can afford to not go back to work, right? And so how do we breastfeeding, which of course we are advocates, but breastfeeding does decrease the rates of infant death or infant mortality. Because even if a baby is born prematurely, the hospital will only really give them breast milk because they have a better chance of surviving. But again, such laws or lack thereof or policies around maternity and family leave can certainly impact what we see for infant death. And comprehensive sex education. I mean, can we get in front of the problem too, as well as a preventative measure, to really talk about, maybe you would be surprised, I don't know, but we have women who come in who don't understand how their bodies work, right? And so there's a lot of things that we have to do from a community standpoint and a community level to be able to, speak to people on how we know that people interpret or receive information. And so Cleveland Clinic did grant us some dollars to be able to start a community-based comprehensive sex education program, which will start at the beginning of 2018. So we're very excited about being able to do that. So thank you. She put the good word in for us. So this is just an example of what we call our perinatal pipeline, and just how we take the mother from when she comes in with us early on. We do all the childbirth and reproductive education in-house. But we also create, and we have a social risk assessment. And in that social risk assessment, we do two things. We measure their level of risk so that we know how many hours we need to spend with that mother, how much support we need to give that mother. But we also have the families lay out at least 3 short-term goals that they can achieve in those 80 weeks that they're with us. What's realistic? Can we help you create an education plan? Do you want to further your education? Can we help you into some job training or get you hooked into workforce development somehow? How can we help you build up your assets? Is it some credit things that you need to work on? Do you want to purchase a house? What goals do you have that we have a lot of connections. And so I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if something is out there working and is helping, how can we integrate that with what it is that we are already doing, right? Because I don't want to do what you want to do, and hopefully you don't want to do what I want to do, because we do what we do very well. We just want everyone to stay in their lane, do what it is that we all do, and come together so that essentially all of this is helping to save our babies. It may not be overt as I'm talking about this. I'm just giving an overview of the presentation of what it is that we do within our program. But the bottom line is these things lower the level of toxic stress. If you don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep, what you're going to eat, and if you don't have to worry about maybe some corporate sort of systemic racism, or you have a space where you can vent about that, right, then you're more likely to be able to carry your baby full term. And so overall, this is how our goal is for equitable birth outcomes. And this is just an overview on how perinatal support improves birth outcomes. Not doula support, perinatal support, which again is that entire 80-week period that we are spending with the mothers from a social standpoint, emotional, medical. Even the doctors and nurses love us too, because we essentially make their jobs, a little easier, because they don't have to worry about going back and forth for ice and blankets in the labor and delivery room. And then we're there with them the entire time that they're in labor and delivery while they are off seeing other patients. And so it just works all the way around the board for all of us. So outcomes and next steps. Bernie and I, we've said it 1,000 times, but race must be at the forefront, or racism. I'm going to change it now for racism. Racism must be at the forefront of our conversations because of this. Mass incarceration, achievement gap, the juvenile justice system, health disparities, and just the overall history of America. And we really it makes people uncomfortable. But imagine this. It makes people who live it very uncomfortable every day. And so we have to have that conversation, and nobody is placing any blame on anyone, because none of us in this room had anything to do with what's going on today. We just have the responsibility moving forward of making sure that we are doing everything within our own power to make sure that we dismantle what has been put before us. So I do have another video that I'm going to show at the end that has, and it's about 6 minutes long, but I think it's so important that we listen to this. So all of these things determine how well our babies live or don't live. it's just a different name. It's all structural racism, right? We're just calling it something different, but it's all the same. So this is our outcomes and next. These are actually our clients. Aren't they cute? All these babies belong to us. So anyway, this is just, I love this infographic that talks about doulas and just the importance, because there's only 2 states in the United States that cover doula care, which I think is ridiculous, right? And even still, it's not even a good reimbursement rate.
Which 2 states?
Oregon and Minnesota. So, and one of them is like reimbursed to $75. Could you imagine being in a labor and delivery room for 24 hours and somebody paying you $75? Right. So this just really talks about the importance of having that support. We have a decrease in cesarean rates within our organization and our group because we are birth workers and doulas at heart, right? That's what we all train to do. So we want to be able to prevent moms from having cesarean sections, because then that also causes some other issues, and there's some biological factors into that as well too with having a cesarean. And so, but doula care has certainly proven to be effective in having fewer interventions. Health equity. And we know this. I think that Birth and Beautiful Communities is maybe 1 out of 5 community-based doula or birth worker programs across the country. And it's very geared towards Black women, and this is why. Not only are infant deaths an issue, but maternal deaths is an issue too. In Texas, Black women are 12 times more likely to die in childbirth than any other group. And so that's why it's important to have cultural type of care or care available. So again, here at the bottom, as it says, Black women are 2 times more likely to want to have the care but not have the care. When I was pregnant, I was young, and I was living in Portage County at the time, so I was going to school there. I knew what a doula was because I had been doing work before. I was like, I couldn't find one. Where was I going to go for that type of support? And then the cost, as I said too, it saves a lot of money, not just on the prematurity side, but on the cesarean side as well too. So to date, we have a team of 15 women overall. 9 of those women are specifically from Greater University Circle. 62 women from Greater University Circle are currently receiving services. We have not lost a baby, and we have 100% full term. And so that little baby that you seen at the beginning in the video, she is turning 1 on November 18th. And so she is our first baby who's turning 1 from our initial pilot in Huff under the Cleveland Foundation. So we're going to throw her a little party next week to say thank you for turning 1 and being with us. So these are just some of our preliminary data. We are still getting our data teased out by our evaluation team, but we are very hopeful, and it seems very promising, at this point. We have been able to decrease the admissions in the NICU. Right? We have been able to 96% full-term pregnancy rate overall, and we are serving close to 170 women right now. So it's a big deal, and it's very needed. So next steps, doula. Neil, show them your shirt, Neil. Yeah. Doula. So Neil is the official doula. And it's a mentorship experience for fathers. So they have theirs every Wednesday on the same nights that we have our SOS circle, so that the moms can come to us and the dads can go to them, and we're only 1 floor from each other. So it's just an experience for men to have a meal and conversation about things that's on their minds, right? So they had their first meeting a couple weeks ago, and I keep laughing about this because they wouldn't let me in because I'm a woman, and I told they can't come to our SOS circle. So, but I did, and I have to put it in this presentation, I did get a picture from the outside. I was being a creep from the window, but it was so genuine as the men were standing around holding hands, and just and being in their moment together to say, like, this is manhood, this is brotherhood, and men need that too, right? We wrap all of this love and the support around women, but fathers too, you know, they need it too, because they're having a baby, and sometimes they feel a bit disconnected or disengaged because they're not carrying a baby, right? And so they don't know what to do, or, you know, suddenly they have this new person, they're like, oh, okay, well, show me, what am I supposed to do? So we want to be able to do that, and so Neil has taken up that initiative, and sounds like it's been going, looks like it's been going very good to me. So I'm happy about that. So some accountability efforts with leadership as well too. You know, so Bernie touched on that before, but really saying, like, look, it's time for a change, and if things need to change within certain institutions or systems, then that needs to happen, and we really need to stop beating around the bush about it. So of course, fundraising strategies, but we just got news last night, and I made the announcement this morning that we have been awarded the Best Baby Zone from the Kellogg Foundation. So we are super excited about that, and why that is so important is because what they're looking for is a multi-sector collaboration around birth equities and the social determinants of health and all of those things that impact poor birth outcomes. So from housing, community development, economic development, systems, policy, all of these things. And I will say that the Cleveland Foundation has certainly been a leader in that sort of work already. With the Greater University Circle Initiative and their partners, Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and Case Western Reserve, for the past 13 years. They have had a focus on economic inclusion and wealth building and community development strategies. And so this was just the next step, right? And so there's only 6 across the country. Cleveland is now number 7, right? And so Neil and I get to go to Cali in January to kick it off. So we're very, very excited about that. But this is a really big deal for Cleveland, and specifically the Best Baby Zone is focused in the Huff neighborhood, which is my heart. So I'm going to show this video, and then I guess we can go straight to a Q&A.
That we live under tremendous weight of slavery now. And this isn't black history we're talking about. This is our national history. It's my history, Judge. People have been lynched, slaves. You went to the army, and one was there to sit in the back of a bus. You need federal legislation to get you into a school to get an education. All of these things. So when you see Bobby Lee on a column 80 feet tall, the man who wanted to retain slavery that offends you. You've got 2 sides, and blacks are screaming prejudice to the white side. And the white side is looking and saying, why don't they get over it? Why can't they get over it? And the blacks don't understand that the whites don't know what the it is, what the IT is. We're trying somehow here to define the it. And unless you know what the it is, don't ask the question. Why can't they get over it? When they sure that they told my bell, watch for the slave, wherever there's a bell, right there. This I can't read right. When I was brought up with my boss man, catch with a pencil of paper. There's 25 lashes. John McDonald. Over the last 16 years, we have been working on the Whitney Plantation. This plantation was built in 1790. Plantation was settled by Ambrose Haley, and this property was available for sale. And for the first year, I just wrapped everything in plastic because it was only a real estate investment for me. It was very shocking to me that I did not know about slavery. And none of them knew. Slaves were here, of course. Had no idea what a commodity they were and how they were treated as a commodity. Had no idea of how how deprived they were. Not by force of circumstance, but by deliberate planning. Like the sheriff of the parish or the head of the militia would have or something like this, to lock up runaway slaves until the month comes and claim them and pay the teams for feeding and watering. They always refer to the slaves as animals. And even the runaway slaves, they use the name Maroon. Maroon is from Cimarron, and Cimarron is a wild pig, And this was part of slave control. My name is Ibrahim Asek. I'm a student colleague in 2000, and he decided to hire me to be the director of research for this project. The fact of going into the archives and digging all those names and taking them back to life, everybody who comes here would know that Abdou from Senegal was a slave ship. He died in 1836. You don't just teach slavery. These people have background. They came from Africa. But also you have to know that these people came maybe naked or half naked, but they didn't need a suitcase to put the culture inside. When you say blues, jazz, rock and roll, reggae, they know it all over the country and they like it. It is rooted in slavery. People need to understand what happened on this plantation. It is not just a way of putting the guilt on someone. No, we don't need that. We need to understand today why we have so many problems in America, why so many people are in jail, why so much poverty, black people being shot and killed like gays. All that was rooted in slavery. And if you don't understand the source of the problem, how can you solve it? But people have to realize that there's a bunch of people like me who started this mess. And they started slavery. And they dealt in slavery. So why would it be a surprise if some white kid came along as a cheerleader and was trying to do something that would correct what his ancestors did? So I thought that I personally would no longer be satisfied living in ignorance, and also that I would try my best to present the facts of slavery to all of the people I could find, so that everyone would understand how strong the deck was stacked against the Africans here. I spent 16 years so far, and we're north of $8 million now. Come up to me.
So that's all of my presentation. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for any questions, reactions.
Any questions? Yes.
I have a question for Kristen. How she, in your prenatal work with the mothers, are you addressing, say, healthy eating, active living, healthy behaviors, no smoking, and those issues?
Yes, we are. So we have a health and wellness manager, and her whole job is she does a nutrition assessment upon intake into our program. And so we strive to eliminate a lot of the barriers that mothers may face. So we do provide trips to the grocery store and to the farmers markets, and we have a person there who is helping moms to shop for healthy foods. And then we also use the community kitchen here in Burtonville Park to be able to do food demonstrations for those mothers as well too. So a part of it, a big part of it is, some behavioral, shifting, so to speak. And so that's also a part of what we do.
Questions? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. This reminded me so much of in Mexico, one of the poorest states. I was in Oaxaca, and they had untrained birth, assistants. But they follow these women for 40 days, like cuarentena. So it's just very similar, and I think we should learn from other cultures and really, I think it's great what you're doing with the doula work, and I think so many women need that, and they don't have that community. So that really resonated with me. And I think, I'm sure a lot of these moms, they don't even know what questions to ask, or they're like, oh, maybe that's a stupid question, and then they don't, ask a pediatrician, or, and so breaking down these systemic barriers is just so important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, how do we, I think I missed the part where we're focusing on the racism piece. So what's being addressed with that? So I know self-care and all those things are great in building communities, and I think the African American community does well at keeping themselves together and trying to protect themselves against the race issues. But when we kicked it off, it was like, yes, we're going to look at these issues. But if we focus on, let's say, the community that isn't living in poverty, and we look at those women, someone like myself that has access to health care, and I still have these outcomes, how do we address the systemic racism? I guess
Sure.
Really, I think I missed that part.
That's a really good question, and there's a couple people here at First Year Cleveland that's on the executive committee. On November 30th, we'll be presenting what we feel as staff as action steps. One we feel is the first is putting together a group of system leaders with their diversity officers, and we are going to call for bias training for everyone within systems that are touching the lives. We think all of us ourselves individually right now, Christin called us to attend Racial Equity Institute, and I think that is a call of action we're asking you to consider today. Two, there are many different biases testing. I know a group of us went through, if you go on Harvard has some bias testing, but we really need to start with each of us. That each of us are touching a lot of different lives. We're hiring people, we're doing things within our own jobs, and we want to make sure people are aware of their own biases. Everyone has biases, but are we connecting the dots how they could be negatively impacting the outcome of a mother and a child? So we're going to start with the hospitals. To be honest, I was just over the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the corporations, to have them join in, that we think when in employment issues, but we also think when you're going to WIC, when you're going to anywhere we're navigating systems, we would like to call for action, thorough, high-quality, evidence-based bias training to make sure all of us change the way we may be unintentionally or intentionally treating individuals. We have seen Cone Health Institute down in the Carolinas take this to a level that they have improved health care, especially in the cancer area between African American and whites, by actually having from the parking lot attendant to the receptionist to all the providers actually go through bias, not only training, but being held accountable in treating every individual that walks in the door equally. And they have actually seen a tremendous improvement. So I think that is one thing that it's got to start with us, not only awareness, and Racial Equity Institute does a lot, but I think First Year Cleveland's calling it to go further, that we want managers, supervisors, CEOs top down to understand we all carry biases and we better check them at the door because they are impacting how we are actually delivering our care. And we're going to ask everyone in this room to check it at the door. You're all hiring, you're all maybe doing research, you're all doing something that you do bring that with you. And whether it's unintentional or intentional, we're asking to call the question and for all of us to look at. So we are doing that piece of structural racism, I think, on a system-wide. In addition, you have to do a couple other things really well. You have to stop preventable sleep-related deaths. And we want a community movement that everybody is going to give a darn about how babies are put down for nap time or sleep time. We want to look at the issue of smoking. 21 of the babies that died from sleep-related deaths were all African American. 21 of them knew the ABCs, alone on the back in the crib. They were aware of it, but didn't change the behavior. There was a crib or a pack and play or a box in the house, but it wasn't used for that purpose. There were other things in there. And if they were co-sleeping with a baby, or they had a baby on a pillow blanket that actually suffocated the baby. We do have to work on maybe 8 things we're saying at the same time to get this to actually shift, and then you got to sustain it. So there's lots of different things, but I think the first call for action is bias. Understanding, there's a lot of different tests on the system. Harvard's the one we're using right now, but really then start looking at our own biases, and if we're interacting with people, hiring people, however you want to look at that, actually you got to own that you got to look at that behavior and be held accountable that you're treating people equally.
I was just wondering, I have two questions, and they kind of relate. Do you have an estimate of how much it costs per family or mother?
Yes, our cost is $3,600 for 80 weeks of support.
So I gave birth to my first child in 2013 at a Cleveland Clinic hospital and at Lakewood, and they had the option for a home nurse to come 3 days after we were discharged from the hospital. She was the last one in the Cleveland Clinic system, and she is obviously gone because Lakewood Hospital is now closed. So what kind of buy-in do you think the hospital system would have for this type of program that's obviously effective and would hit so many families?
So we have really good partnerships with the hospitals, of course, because we are always in a hospital setting. So I know what program is just speaking of because I had a home visiting nurse too, but there are some home visiting nurse programs. There's Nurse Family Partnership right now. And it's for first-time moms, but at the same time, they are able to come out and make home visits. I mean, I think that it makes all the difference to have that support. And again, it's a cost benefit. It saves a lot more money on the back end if you're able to do that, up front and be preventative. So
that's why I was shocked that they were getting rid of that program when this was clearly an issue in this community.
Right.
I guess that's because she was fantastic. We did not feel judged. She helped us give the first bath. Like, there were just, our house was under construction. So we were, it was like she's coming into this dust-filled house and we still didn't feel judged. So that support, and it was just one visit, and that was even so meaningful as a new mom.
Yeah, we have about 2,500 moms that are getting home visiting or birth workers out of the 14,000. What we're trying to do is go to scale. Ohio Medicaid will have a grant coming out within the next day or two. They would like to expand, and they'd like to invest another $3 million. So it is something we really you have to get it to scale. I think it's making a difference, but when you're only touching 2,500 out of 14,000, you got to make this scalable. And I think we're working on how to get this to scale, how to make it as a kind of part of the whole delivery system. It's not an option out here. Christin and other people that are doing this work, we want it as the system of care.
We're going to have to take one more question. We can answer other questions afterwards. Is there a question out there? Yes.
I did actually have a question. I didn't realize that you had such a strong collaboration between the hospital systems and the Cleveland Clinic is pretty well represented here, but have you looked into trying to actually partner programs? UH has a center in pregnancy program that sounds similar but not quite the same as what you have described, but I don't know if they have additional funding sources that you could join up with.
So we partner directly with University Hospital's Center of Pregnancy Program. So they invite us in very early, usually before 16 weeks, so around that time, to sit within the circles with the moms. And so we recruit a lot that way. In fact, we have a direct partnership with UH's midwifery team, who are the facilitators of the Center of Pregnancy Program. So we haven't done that for other sites, and but UH was certainly the person. They are the longest running too. So they've been doing this for many years, and so it is effective. And so we may be looking at more formal type of partnership moving forward with them.
Everyone knows what centering is, so now every one of your birth hospitals and every one of your FQHCs are certified to offering prenatal care in group setting versus individual. It's evidence-based, it's across the board, shows better health outcomes for both the mom and the baby. However, we have worked really hard over 3 years to get this in all the hospitals, but we had 500 out of your 14,747 in centering. So we had to get that to scale. What's a little unique is we want to complement centering with home health workers. Centerings don't go in the home. There is a piece when you're in the neighborhood, from the neighborhood with a trust. You have to do both, I guess, is ours. But it has to be seamless. We have a lot of silos that we have other programs. Christin's is probably the best integrated in hospitals. We have to get Moms First, Nurse Family Partnership, and OMRI, now called Moms and Babies First, fully integrated. So they're sharing information and can be able to understand that at the center is the consumer, the mother and the baby.
And the other point, a little background, the head of mental hospitals is on the advisory committee. So is UH, and I think Cleveland Clinic,
all three.
So they're there, and breaking down those silos, that's going to be key. So just as a reminder, here is the rest of the seminars for the rest of the year. Take a look at them, come. Again, the food is great, and thank you very much for being here.